Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to discuss one of those controversial game topics that has always seemed to divide any FPS community. This is time to kill. Often you see it as the acronym TTK. The term is pretty self-explanatory, the amount of time once you begin shooting at your enemy until they are dead. If you have a gun that kills in 4 shots and it shoots 1 bullet every second, then the time to kill is going to be 4 seconds. Pretty straightforward on the surface, but things get much more complicated when you try to figure out what is an appropriate time to kill. Now, many shooters have drastically different time to kills, as they should. There is no best time to kill, it has to be appropriate for the design of the game. Halo has a very long time to kill. Ruling out outliers like sniper rifle headshots and rocket launchers, it can take the better part of an assault rifle magazine to kill your enemy. And it actually works well because the game is designed around this time frame, balancing player count and map design around it. Interesting elements emerge because of these longer time to kills, like heavy reliance on grenades. On the other hand, Call of Duty has a very short time to kill, allowing you to mow down droves of enemy players when you're on a roll. It doesn't give you much time to react to an ambush, but again, this style works with the pacing of the game and design. Respawns are so quick that if somebody does kill you, you're back in the action and ready to counter the attack in no time. There is no absolute best time to kill, so why do we argue about high time to kill versus low time to kill so much? I commonly hear things like higher time to kill increases the skill level of the game or increases the skill gap, or lower time to kill gives you a more realistic experience. And both of these statements can be true, but of course nothing is as simple as that, and obviously so many other factors come into play. Rather than thinking of time to kill as higher is always better or lower is always better, it really only makes sense to say which time to kill is appropriate for this game, or what time to kill achieves the gameplay experience that I want from this game. Let's start off talking about higher time to kill, basically increasing the time it takes to kill your opponent, both the pros and cons of this. Higher time to kill leads to longer combat sequences, which often decides a victor based on accuracy and playstyle. You could call this skill. Even if a mediocre player shoots first, a highly skilled player can come back and win the firefight because they have enough time to outplay their opponent. This is a good thing as it promotes skill, which is something that I feel any competitive shooter should promote. The problem with higher time to kill is that it also turns any engagement into a numbers game. The higher your time to kill, the lower your chances you have of winning a 1 versus 2 engagement. I like to call this the tank principle. Battlefield 4 illustrates this well. Imagine one highly skilled tanker meets 2 mediocre tankers on an open plain. Even if the highly skilled player uses all of their tricks and tactics, they more than likely won't come out of the engagement alive, simply because in a 2v1 scenario there's just too much damage output from the 2 players during the duration of battle for your skill to actually make a difference. In that situation, the best case scenario is that you have a 1v1 trade with one of the enemy tanks and the second tank lives. And the worst case scenario is that both mediocre tankers win and you die. Obviously, having more players on your side needs to account for something in video games, but unless balanced properly, it can turn into a situation where the numbers of players greatly outweigh the importance of skill. So in a way, you could say that higher time to kill does increase the skill gap unless you're in a multiple enemy engagement, a 2v1 scenario, in which case a higher skilled player can easily lose out to 2 mediocre players or even 2 novice players. Okay, let's transition to lower time to kill, both the pros and cons. Lower time to kill gives more benefits to the player who shoots first. This can make camping a more powerful tool depending on the game design, though I would say even in lower time to kill games like Call of Duty, you rarely see the best players camping. It often puts more emphasis on flanking since that will give you the first shot advantage in many situations. It also allows a great player to defeat multiple mid-level players or a lot of bad players, eliminating the tank principle concept we were just talking about. Now, the cons of a lower time to kill is that it allows bad players to defeat highly skilled players if they happen to get the first shot. This effect can be lessened by good map design and game mechanics, but it's still something that's going to occur. It also puts less emphasis on precise aiming and more of an emphasis on reaction time. Ultimately, you could argue that it lowers the skill gap, but I would counter argue that higher time to kill makes the skill gap less important when facing off against multiple enemies. Now, even though I don't believe that there's some sort of universal best time to kill for all games, I do believe that you can find the best time to kill based on the overall game design. The most important factor being the player count and combat frequency. If you have a small 5 versus 5 competitive shooter, Rainbow Six, Dirty Bomb, Counter-Strike, just to name a few of them, you can design your time to kill around a 1v1 or 2v1 scenario, as that's the most likely type of combat you will see. Obviously, you can extrapolate this to 2v2 or 2v3 and further, but it's the same principle. Higher time to kill generally works well on these smaller, more intimate shooters because it does generally increase the skill gap for smaller scale engagements. However, once you start to increase the player count on any first-person shooter, the 1v1 and the 2v1 becomes far less common. In a 32-player or even 64-player game of Battlefield, it's fairly common to round a corner and see 3 or more enemies at the exact same time, or kill one player and immediately have their teammates run around the corner to engage before you can reload or prepare. At this point, a higher time to kill will almost certainly guarantee your death, where a lower time to kill increases your chances of winning. I would argue that lower time to kill, at least for short range engagements, is more appropriate for highly populated games like Battlefield. There is of course the problem of game bloating, where one game tries to create all these different types of game modes that have different player counts, different play styles, but they're using one universal time to kill model. And this usually creates a situation where a lot of game modes are not good or well balanced because the time to kill is based around one specific style of playing. Battlefield is certainly guilty of this, using the exact same rush map for a 24-player game of Rush or 64-player game of Rush. The playstyle changes dramatically when you add that many new players to one game mode. This creates a divergence in the Battlefield community, where some players want a slower time to kill and other players want a faster time to kill, simply because they prefer playing different types of game modes. People playing on the small competitive matches of Battlefield might want that higher time to kill, where players playing on the 64-player, 32-player high population servers are going to want a lower time to kill. Not universally, but generally speaking, I imagine this to be the case. But even so, time to kill can't just be increased or decreased like it's some slider that directly influences playstyle. It still has to be carefully balanced and based on number of enemies, engagement distances, how many bullets you have before reloading, and hundreds of other factors, maybe even thousands. It's fun to think about the complexity of time to kill in game design, and I hope this video inspires you all to think of it as well. If nothing more, I hope it serves to reduce the commonly misused idea that higher time to kill makes a game more skill-based, since that simply isn't a universal truth when fighting multiple enemies. So as always guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.